In this lecture, we'll review what it means to be an emergent adult. Emergent adulthood has been proposed as a new life stage between adolescence and young adulthood, lasting roughly from ages 18 to 25. 5 features make emergent adulthood distinctive. First, identity explorations. Then, instability, self-focus, feeling in between adolescence and adulthood, and a sense of broad possibilities for the future. Emergent adulthood is found mainly in industrialized countries where most young people obtain higher education and median ages of entering marriage and parenthood are around 30. These are variations in emergent adulthood within industrialized countries. It lasts longer in Europe, and in Asian industrialized countries, the self-focused freedom of emergent adulthood is balanced by obligations to parents and by conservative views of sexuality. In non-industrialized countries, although today emergent adulthood exists only among the middle-class elite, it can be expected to grow in the 21st century as these countries become more affluent. Now, I found an article entitled, "The Transition from Adolescence to Adulthood. Emergent Adulthood Involves 2 Key Components of Autonomy," and that is by Dr. Sylvie Naar. Now, the transition to adulthood is critical, but often misunderstood, as societal and economic changes have created new demands and challenges for young people, particularly those in the 18 to 25-year-old range. We now recognize emergent adulthood as a distinct period separate from adolescence and older adulthood. During this period, emergent adults experience new life roles. Research by Arnett and others has shown the length of time for young people to actually create a personal identity has increased to the mid to late 20s. Emergent adulthood in Western culture is still a time of shifting identities. There is a continued risk of experimentation with unhealthy behaviors, posing perhaps an even greater risk for the young people in this later emergent adulthood stage. They are no longer minors and are faced with 2 additional life challenges: increased adult responsibilities and decreased familial support. Now, in regards to autonomy, emotional and behavioral components, a core element in the journey to adulthood involves the attainment of autonomy. During this time period, young people establish their uniqueness from others, and new interests, values, goals, and worldviews divergent from close others may emerge. As a normal developmental process, autonomy has been described as having 2 components: emotional and behavioral. Emotional autonomy refers to becoming free from childish emotional dependence on adults. Parents can either foster an overdependence on the developing young person or provide the opposite: a lack of guidance and support. Clearly, a balance of both is the most preferred course of action. Behavioral autonomy refers to youth learning to become more skilled in their own self-governing behavior and independent enough to make decisions on their own accord. Young persons are faced with the ultimate developmental conundrum: On one hand, they are met with the task of exploring alternative behaviors and roles that smack of adult-like decisions. And on the other hand, they bear the new yet daunting role of no longer being confined by parental and once perceived societal regulations. From the onset of puberty through age 25, the adolescent brain undergoes profound changes in structure and function. Advances in developmental neuroscience and neuroimaging demonstrate regions of the brain develop at different rates from birth to emergent adulthood. Recognizing how many adolescent behaviors can be attributed to a developmental mismatch between structural, functional imbalances in certain brain regions is a key to MI spirit. Recent research about 2 key brain regions has evidenced how structural changes affect functional behavioral outputs in youth. Specifically, evidence is emerging on how the limbic regions are associated with reward and emotional regulation, and how regions such as the prefrontal cortex are associated with cognitive control. Other brain regions associated with the activation and processing of social information can actually enhance the development of adolescent cognitive executive functions as compared to other developmental periods. For example, while impulsive behaviors may be seen as a lack of cognitive control, we concur some degree of risk-taking behavior may be necessary and important for youth to gain important life experiences required to assume adult roles. This developmental period offers incredible opportunities, in contrast to older adults whose brain are no longer in a formative stage of development. The neural networks of youth are being reshaped with each learning experience. Understanding these processes can further help you to understand how to turn challenges into opportunities for growth. Again, emergent adulthood has been proposed as a new life stage between adolescence and young adulthood, lasting roughly from ages 18 to 25. There are 5 features that make emergent adulthood distinctive. First, identity explorations, instability, self-focus, feeling in between adolescence and adulthood, and a sense of broad possibilities for the future.